Chapter 8. How to live in a time like this. How to live in a time like this, that is the question. This is not only a time that tries men's souls, but tests their ability to live at all. It is a period of profound uncertainty for the average man. What the next hour will bring forth, no one knows. The sense of security, known in happier days, and the noble old habit of planning with confidence, for the future is gone. The great word of the hour seems to be security. It is an era of acute hardship and suffering. For youth, it is a time of peculiar discouragement. Some things are growing more and more, although now it tends to be indirect by encouraging whatever. When openings and opportunities are limited, well, dangling that in front of them, right? A vast army of the unemployed walks the streets in vain search of work. The old self-respect of the common man is being drained off against his will by the necessary support by government. Serious men have grown gray in these years. Everyone is sorely puzzled. Revolution threatens, dictatorships grow brazen, democracy is jeopardized by its ancient enemy, autocracy. Well, America has never experienced a democracy, except maybe some Native American tribe, right? Either in the form of one man or of the mass. And overall, like Vesuvius, over the Bay of Nepal's, war clouds warn of a possible explosion. Well, humanity seems to outdo itself in all sorts of ways, right? As the generations go on. A dying man said to me recently, "For myself, I do not regret to leave this world, for life is so ominously uncertain here. I only fear for my loved ones how they are going to live and what they shall be called upon to endure in the years ahead. It is a far-reaching problem which taxes all our powers and ingenuity. How to live in a time like this." At the very least, we need to be individuals of different abilities. But there is a way, a very successful way, and the prescription for it was written in a time similar to our own, though long ago. And we need to distinguish sometimes between such things like, is it the right prescription? Is it a prescription for a different time and place, or psychological type, or different material culture? Its prescription is found in the Bible. Now that's an interesting way of phrasing it, right? There's value in the Bible. A book which enjoys timelessness and universality for many reasons. Well, Jesus in the Bible says it's not for all times and places, but for particular, and there'll be another one to come, but not the least of which is that it is written out of human experience, which, though circumstances may, and indeed do, differ, is essentially unchanging from generation to generation. Now, some things like not using mixed fabrics and stuff like that definitely don't work in an international age or a modern age or whatever. In a period of upheaval and uncertainty, the Master spoke these words, "In your patience ye shall win your souls." This is at first sight a strange statement. It is, for example, a little startling to be told that we must win our souls. We have been in the habit of thinking we possess a soul as a divine inheritance. It reminds us of the statement of Browning to the effect that he believed in the immortality of the soul, or a soul can be discerned. We are accustomed to think of our souls as the fully developed gift of God. The Master meant that the soul is, rather like a brown bulb which contains the possibility of the full-grown lily. The soul is given to one in incipient form, and it may grow or die. In your patience, you shall finally win a soul. What is the meaning of that great word? Set the word patience off by itself, as an airplane might write it in letters of smoke against the sky. Behold the noble virtues that flash from it like jewels: perseverance, calmness, forbearance, philosophical composure, poise, faith. We are told that in such virtues we shall come into possession of our souls, or, in other words, achieve an understanding and philosophy of our own personalities in their relation to this difficult world. Despite the noisy, clamorous, battered, disillusioned age in which we live, in the deep patience of our hearts, our souls will grow until, in a profound sense, we have learned to overcome the world. Because our souls are beyond the material world. Well, in them, right? Now, let us take this word, patience, and adopting it as our attitude toward life, consider how, by its use, we may live happily and well in a time like this. Now, I like the word sabr, which is similar in ways to netzch in the Bible. The firmness and stuff like this. It's not, because people will say, I'm going to make you wait and all this other stuff, just be patient. It's like, you're not. Being patient would be to oppose the dragging things on and stick to that and stand up for your rights, right? Patience doesn't mean you have to like it. Just be steadfast about what is right. It teaches us, first of all, to live a day at a time. Carpe diem, seize today, is a bit of good advice, come down from pagan days. Well, there were no pagan days, unless you say that pagan is a material culture thing. And what? The right religion starts at a particular time and everything before is pagan? It's like, that doesn't make sense. How just would your idea of God be if you say that all these people are lost because they weren't born until after a particular time, and most people would be lost, And remember, pagan and heathen are just words for monotheists in most church doctrines, particularly before 1967, when the Catholics said, okay, the Jews and the Muslims, let's not call them pagans. And using terms like an insult rather than literally is, an issue I don't want to involve myself in either. The Buddhists, likewise, exhort their adherents to make the most of every moment. Gautama taught that the passing beauty of a thing in nature, a gracious friendship, a noble thought, or a fleeting inspiration, all must be highly prized. Live this one day to the full without borrowing trouble about the future is an emphatic teaching of Christianity. Do not be troubled about tomorrow. Tomorrow will take care of itself. An old Christian hymn sings, Lord, for tomorrow and its needs, I do not pray. And a still greater hymn wisely declares, I do not ask to see the distant scene, one step enough for me. Taking a step at a time is the best means of progress. At my summer home, the garage is perhaps 200 yards from the house, and at night it is pitch dark when the lights of the car are extinguished. And the garage doors are shut. I carry a flashlight to guide me along the road to my house. I have discovered that the most effective way of using my flashlight is to throw its illumination upon the path immediately ahead of me. If I lift it and throw it far ahead, its beam is soon dissipated in the darkness, and I find myself falling and stumbling. When I am content to light up merely the next step or two, I keep on the path and come quickly and safely to the house when our thought is projected days, months, and years ahead, the power of our personalities is dissipated, and we stumble and go haltingly through life. I've seen the power of flashlights build up so much in my life. Your standard flashlight, you try to take it into a cave, even at the start of this century, versus now you can light up a city block. Some of these lights that people have, I mean, even that big old clunky light, the size of a heater, is nothing to having real LEDs and stuff. Put the force of your thoughts on the day at hand, and let tomorrow, and indeed all the tomorrows, take care of themselves. The chances are, if this day's work is done just as well as you can do it, that subsequent days will, by a natural law of adjustment, care for themselves. At any rate, it adds an unnecessary and unwise burden to take the tomorrows on your shoulders today. I recall my first Sunday as minister of my first church. That initial sermon lasted about 12 minutes, a fact which would doubtless cause my present congregation to sigh for the old days, which come not back. I could think of absolutely nothing more to say, but I had worked 2 weeks on that sermon. On the way home from church, I thought, how in the world will I prepare 2 sermons next Sunday? And then, in a terrifying flash, came a vision of all the sermons I would have to preach until I died. What, I worried, would I do about sermons 20 years hence? These thoughts filled me with fear when it occurred to me that such long-projected anxieties were very foolish. Accordingly, I decided to do the next sermon as best I could and trust that those of 20 years later would take care of themselves, or at least I resolved not to worry about them until I came to them. This decision gave me great peace of mind, and it's important that weekly services be kept at a length that the people of all ages and stuff can endure. Now, you should develop to the point where you can handle a 30-minute service, including the prayers and all that stuff. The problem is the same whatever your occupation may be. You will do your best work and be happier if you resolutely put worries and fears of the future out of your mind and live and diligently labor on today's task. If you do your work honestly and sincerely and are living well this day, the chances are that the days to come will indeed take care of themselves. Live a day at a time is sound wisdom. Sir William Osler, who gave much wise counsel to mankind, advised us to adopt the principle of watertight sections, which are used in constructing ocean liners, to so learn to control the machinery of our lives as to live in what he calls day-tight compartments. This, he says, is the most certain way to ensure safety on the voyage. Get on the bridge, the sage doctor advised, as captain of your life, and see that at least the great bulkheads are in working order. Touch a button and hear at every level of your life the iron doors shutting out the past, the dead yesterdays. Touch another and shut off by a mental current the future, the unborn tomorrows. Then you're safe for today. George Herbert's advice also is good. Undress your soul at night, he says, not by self-examination, but by shedding, as you do your garments, the daily sins, whether of omission or commission, and you will wake a free man with a new life. It is this kind of patience with life, this being willing to take the day as it comes, and the genuine effort to do your best you can with it. And what is extremely important, the ability, when it is finished, to put it away without regrets, and take up a new day that will truly help one to win and possess his soul. Patience means another thing, and that is inner quietness. The patient man is surely one who is unhurried in his soul and who finds it possible to relax within. It is supremely essential that in the midst of the confusion of this time, there should be no confusion inside a man. It is at this point particularly that Christians are effective. For, from the self-contained and poised spirit of Jesus, they have discovered for themselves what the old mystics called peace at the center. One thing is sure, so long as the din and jar of life do not get into the soul of a man, he is safe. Yeah, we need to distinguish between the body, the mind as they call it, and the soul. So if one is harmed, it doesn't mean that the others are harmed. So long as he can keep an inward stillness and poise, it does not really matter what confusion reigns without. When, for any cause, that inner quietness gives way, and the din, clamor, and litter of the world come pouring into his soul, he either goes to pieces and sinks, or, God help him, becomes crass of mind and hard of heart. And thus is seen the importance of severe attention to the inner spiritual life, for that is a man's last citadel. A ship in a storm at sea may be pounded hard by the wind and waves, but if she has a steady captain and a dry engine room, with her motors throbbing on, she will ride out the storm. By the same token, the man who maintains peace at the center, who preserves a place in his heart where all of these disturbing turbulent factors of life may be assembled, and in a spirit of detachment, evaluated, will stand unbroken amidst all tumult. It is well for the individual to learn the art of spiritual relaxation and practice it with regularity. And when it comes to rituals and stuff like that, you definitely want to have the blood flow and the position control and relaxing the muscles and the breathing and all that stuff practiced. I have a good friend, an exceedingly busy physician and surgeon. He carries on a prodigious amount of work, but is always calm and filled with the joy of living. He does enough to break down 3 ordinary men. One day I went to his office to see him about a matter of mutual concern, with no thought of my own physical condition, which was, so far as I could see and feel, satisfactory. His waiting room was filled with patients. The nurse told me that he had performed 2 operations that morning, but that he would soon be in, and without any interlude, must take up his list of waiting patients. Accordingly, she ushered me into his private office, where she said I might see him for just a moment. When he came in presently, as was his habit, he arrived in a great rush. He dropped into a chair, and I noticed that he let his body become limp. His head went back on the back of the chair, his legs out in front of him, and his arms hung limply over the side of the chair. Every muscle in his body was relaxed. He began to talk about the business at hand, but mentioned a play he had recently seen, and then discussed a new book he was reading. Then suddenly he looked at me searchingly and said, "What is the matter with you?" The way he said it made my face go white. "Why?" I replied breathlessly. "I do not know. Is anything wrong with me?" "Why, of course," he said. "Just look at you. There you sit. You are in a hurry. You think you have so much to do. You sit there actually gripping the arms of your chair. Let yourself go. Relax, he commanded. Drop your head back. Let your legs and arms be limp. The trick is figuring that out, standing and stuff. Now forget what you have to do. Tell me what you have been reading. In about 5 minutes, he snapped up in his chair, briskly took the business in hand, and in a moment or two, genially ushered me out and started with fresh energy down a long line of patients. I went down the street, chuckling to myself over the discovery of what subsequently proved to be one of the most important secrets of peace in the midst of life's stress and strain that I had ever found. My friend, the doctor, was in a deep sense possessing his soul, his body, and his mind by virtue of the quality of patience. That, I am sure, is an essential element in learning to live in a time like this. That is what religion really is, because religion is just not church. But then again, even the church part of it requires being steadfast and patient and all that stuff. In a beautiful passage in the Bible, we are taught to rise up with wings as eagles so that we may walk life's dusty way without fainting. It teaches us the art of living in two worlds at the same time, the world without and the world within, but cautions us that if the world without is permitted to encroach upon the world within, trouble will result. They must work in perfect coordination, not overlapping nor infringing in any way, the one upon the other. This idea of patience, quietness, and inner confidence is vitally important if one is not to be swept off his feet and suffer his equilibrium to be disturbed, if not destroyed, by this confused and tangled time. How shall we live in this age of revolution? Christianity teaches us, first of all, not to become panicky. Christianity has the philosophical detachment of age and experience. So what do they mean by that? Are they admitting that Christianity has changed through the years? And why can't it be as revealed or inspired if it was supposed to have been revealed and inspired? It has lived through many upheavals in history. It knows that the world is not going to pieces in a minute, nor, for that matter, at all. The furor of a decade cannot disturb the equilibrium of the centuries. The Christian calmly trusts the world to God. All hail the God of this world and age, right? The Christian philosopher is aware that an earthquake will shake down only those things which should be shaken, but that those things which have enduring foundations will survive, and by that token are the only things that should survive. Gibbon, in his Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, describes those dark days when the Goths and Huns and Vandals swept down upon Rome. They fell upon the glorious temples and palaces of the eternal city with destructive zeal. When they had finished their depredations, however, it was observed by the thoughtful that only the filigree work, the frills and superficial ornaments, had been destroyed. The great pillars and lofty arches still remained, standing forth in an even more imperial beauty because of the newly demonstrated strength inherent in their simplicity. Thus our civilization finds itself in earthquake times. The Christian philosopher, with quiet poise, reminds us that the eternal verities upon which our civilization is based scarcely tremble, while superficial elements, many of them worthless, are destroyed. The confusion of our era may sound like a terrific storm, but when it is over, the great trees will still stand. Frequently, These days I have been reminded of an incident in my childhood during one of the happy summers spent at the ancestral home of my grandfather and grandmother in southern Ohio. It was one of those old-fashioned homes, so familiar to many of us who grew up in the first quarter of this century. There was a front room known as the parlor, which was opened up only on special occasions, such as a wedding, a funeral, or a visit by the minister. My grandmother did not have the benefit of electric refrigeration. She did not need it. That parlor was so cold in the wintertime that she kept her butter and eggs in a crock just inside the door. It scarcely even thawed out in the summertime. In the center of the room was a marble-topped table on which a great Bible rested, fastened by big brass clasps. On a shelf under the table was one of the old-fashioned stereoscopes, which, when placed to the eyes, would enable one to see a picture of the destruction of Pompeii or the glories of Niagara Falls. Those red things, right? With the wheel. There's different forms of them, though. On the wall was a picture of the 3 horses' heads. The 3 horses always running and never getting anywhere. Over in the corner was a great shell, which, when placed to the ear, caused one to hear the roar of some remote sea beach. In another corner was the omnipresent horsehair sofa, where I used to sit at family prayers, and which I remember because of its stiff bristles, which were exceedingly distressing to one's anatomy in the summertime. No matter how many of these bristles one pulled out whilst engaged in morning devotions, there seemed to be a never-ending supply. The bedroom in which I slept had a great 4-poster, and even in summer, when I climbed into bed at night, it was into a mammoth mattress in which I sank down so deeply that only my ears protruded. One night, a tremendous storm swept down upon the little village. The wind sighed and howled about the house, and struck it with such force that it seemed to tremble. I pulled the covers up over my head in fright. Then, peeking out, I saw the great trees waving back and forth, driven by the wind, making eerie shadows across the window pane. A roar of thunder and a flash of lightning followed, in which, for a fleeting moment, the room and the scene outside were illuminated. To me it seemed that everything was breaking, and I was heartbroken because I was afraid that the great trees would go down. I loved those trees. Under them I played. They were my friends. Finally, however, despite the storm, as is a little boy's way, I went off to sleep. In the morning the room was flooded with sunlight. I sprang from bed, fearful of the destruction I would behold, when, to my relief, I saw that the ground, to be sure, was covered with debris, but only that of a few old broken branches. The great trees still stood. Their roots, driven deep into the good earth, held them throughout many tempests. The storms about us now are violent, but in the center of it all stands with serene confidence the man with the Christian philosophy of life, because God is in his heart, and he knows that God is in the world. He is not panicky, because he knows that what must go should go, and there are plenty of decadent branches whose day is done, but he also knows that the abiding realities, time-tested and good, when the storm is over, will stand as surely as ever. The genuine values are rooted deeply and firmly in man's cumulative experience, and will endure. That, I say, is one great function which Christianity performs in an age of revolution to contribute that calm faith in the eternal balance of things, which is deep and true philosophy by which to live in a time like this. And see, philosophy is not just quotes, it's a way, right? The suggestion that in your patience you shall win your own soul, because no one's going to do your hero deeds for you, right? Indicates another help for living in a time like this, and that is the expectation that out of the difficulties of this hour, a better day will come to pass. It always works that way. The pearl is developed from the pain and death of the oyster coal, which warms and cheers man, may come out of the decay of ancient trees. And April, with its new fresh beauty, is born in dark and boisterous March. Well, it's no more dark than light, and that's another thing of drawing your focus to one side or another. Albert Schweitzer, the eminent German scholar, musician, and world-famous Christian, paid tribute to the wholesome value of pain when he said, "The age that has no great sorrow on its heart will have no great music on its lips." Robert Browning, we are told, had strange eyes, one of short vision, the other of long. By shutting the long one, he could see almost microscopic objects with the short eye, while by reversing the process, he could see sights far out of range of lesser men. It was such ability to see that caused him to lay down a couplet with mighty deep truth in it. And still as the day wore on, the trouble grew, wherefrom I guessed there would be born a star. Every man and woman is a star, right? Well, there's different sizes and brightnesses and all that of stars, but are you going to live and develop that star? All of which is to say that not until it gets really dark do the beautiful stars appear. Patience of the Christian variety teaches us in these dark days to look for the bright stars of hope. This is perhaps a hard lesson, but our generation will be better for it. We have been pretty soft in our attitude toward life, expecting ease and luxury without struggle. Some theorist may encourage us to hope for that, but the fact is that nature does not work that way. Fine art, noble music, honorable wealth, and real men are made by no soft and easy process, but by labor, sorrow, and pain. Some time ago, at a banquet, I was seated next to Mr. Walter Damrosch, the famed and beloved music maker. I asked him to name for me his favorite symphony. "Oh," he replied with a laugh, "I cannot say, for to me they are all beautiful." But I was not to be put off, and pressed him for an answer, saying, "If you were about to die, and could hear but one more symphony, which would it be?" "Well," he replied thoughtfully, "I would want to hear the Adagio from Beethoven's Ninth Symphony." "You will recall," Mr. Damrosch continued, "that Beethoven wrote that work after he became deaf, and it has been often noted that in these passages he evoked new harmonies of ethereal bliss and wondrous beauty. They were combinations of sounds never heard before, and were drawn not alone from his mental remembrance of music, but, and this is the important thing, they were new sounds evidently from a higher world. Well, certainly people composed those combinations before, but maybe they weren't popularly known. It was as if his deaf ears having been deadened to the sounds of this present world, gave him another, an inward ear, open to a higher world. Marmaduke Pickthall referred to the Quran as the inimitable symphony. And has anybody been able to match this symphony in even, a line? There's been attempts, but you can tell them apart. You can tell Hadith and Quran apart and stuff like that. So you can think of revealed scripture, like Shabda Yoga does. It's just the divine song, or divine songs. Thus, we will be fortunate people if we can develop that patience of spirit, which will enable us to find in our difficulties a higher and therefore deeper appreciation and understanding of the meaning of life. Now, if you look at the Bible, the book of Revelation sounds better in English, but the rest of them sound worse. And some of them actually come out rather poetic and musical, or at least passages of them.